One of life's most important teachings is that yesterday is only as powerful as today, as long as we allow it to be yesterday. So a concept, a tale, or a film that began and it's very feasible that narrative or that conclusion is disheartening, or it aches to gaze back on track, perhaps a recollection of anything was less than ideal, something you'd like to get away from. So the question is, why do we do it? An ancient story, why do we continue to recreate power, self-inflicted injury? Unquestionably, seeing the past played a crucial role. It got to you where you are now. In many ways, influenced your worldview, represents your beliefs. It was all the way to this point because there is worth in it. But consider the following scenario. Entering your vehicle, twisting the keys, and considering that you can only drive at the time. Along the highways, you just associate with the road you drove on yesterday. You can tell where you are by the street signage, where you have previously been your reality now. Depends on what you've already done. As a result, adjust and become used to it. You would say that's outrageous, right? Yesterday's path has nothing to do with where you are going now. Just like a boat's wake, trailing off behind it has nothing to do with where it's going next. The person holding the wheel controls that. We are saturated with freedom. There is so much opportunity and possibility and potential in front of us that we fail to see because we cannot stop thinking about that fictitious story we called yesterday. We confuse the path we took then for the one we need now. The wake from the steering wheel, what is that story about what was? The gateway to change is unshackling ourselves from those imaginary monsters. And more often than not, the answer isn't in finding some solution, it is in cutting ties with those things that no longer serve us. Then we see the world as it truly is. Then we see the magic laid out before us. And I get that it's easier said than done. Leaving a part of us behind hurts. Looking in a mirror and being vulnerable enough to say, I can be more than this. It is not easy, but it's possible. And everything starts with how we see ourselves and when we remain captives to the past. Everything about who we think of ourselves to be outdated. We are neglecting one of our superpowers, the perpetual ability to restart. One of the most important conversations I've never had on this topic. Seemed trivial at the time, but I was having lunch with a friend and we're talking. And I mentioned to her that I was full, and she goes, well then, why are you still eating? And I'm like, because I paid for it, right? I wanted to get my money is worth. And she says in a very the pragmatic way, Eddie, just because you paid for it doesn't mean you need to eat it, right? It's a sunk cost, why don't you move on? And the whole thing seems silly, right? It's like, yeah, if you're not hungry, don't eat. Move on. But in the grand scheme of things, how many of us keep on consuming that which doesn't serve us? How many of us stay too long when we should be letting go? We let the path behind us dictate the one before us. See, there's a tendency to overvalue what we know, to feel so invested in how things are, even when we are not happy or it's not healthy, that we will take the pain of now over the potential for something greater. That's precisely why the unknown is so terrifying and it's not concrete. It is a world unsettled. And man, do we hate being unsettled. But what we fail to realize is that every time we close our eyes, take a breath and work up the courage to step into that unknown, to leave yesterday behind us, life gives us new pieces. It resets the stage, it provides new tools to build something incredible, something more ideal, more conducive to our goals, our hopes, and our dreams. And the thought is, well, but what if things become worse than they are right now? What if I move forward and I find myself more confused, more lost? What if things are more chaotic? And that may for a moment be true. But what we do is we adjust. We learn things we never knew. We see things through a lens that we never could touch, things that we never thought existed. It wasn't in staying, but in leaving that we rediscovered who we were meant to be. That we allowed our truest selves to flourish, and worst case scenario, contrary to popular belief, it is not the world ends. No, The worst case scenario, should you find the courage to move forward, is that you end up right back where you started. A little more confident, a little bolder, and better prepared to live this life like you never had. All that's needed is for you to convince yourself that there is more. You just need to taste the fruit, step into the sunlight. That's the difference between reality and the story in your head. Reality is that this world has for you everything you need to change, to grow, to explore, build a life that means something. It has support structures and the resources for you to pull up yourself back up every time you fall, to say it is okay, that hurt, but now let's try a different angle. There is undoubtedly what you need. And the question is never whether the X on that treasure map exists. Trust me, it is there. The question is whether you can pause that story in your head, the tales of a dark, mean, and scary world trying to hold you down. Pause the idea that you're nothing more than you are yesterday. You are nothing more than how people knew you to be. Pause the idea that you're nothing without that job or title or that relationship. Pause the idea that you need him or her or them in your life. Every day you wake up, you are blank canvas. Who cares about yesterday? What do you want to paint now? When you walk out your front door, where do you want to go now? Step outside that circle of familiarity. See how artificial and in some cases ridiculous these boundaries are and what we place around ourselves. Life is an invitation, not a set of requirements. And when you free yourself of that, not only will you feel like someone new, not only will you experience life as it was meant to be experienced, but you will see that this world will conform to your new definition. This world wants to support you. It wants to lift you up, and yeah, it may be challenging and strenuous. It may force you to work harder and be braver than you've ever been. But it is at the end of the day, you're an ally. You just have to see your future self before it materializes when no one else gets it. So move on from all that does not serve you. Split away from the old principles, guidelines, and rules. Perhaps you depleted time, furthermore, energy into making this reality. Perhaps it seems like an amazing piece of your character. Perhaps the present moment is the main security you have. Fine, however, my expectation is that you can regard it and leave. See it as a depressed expense that it is since you paid to arrive. That doesn't mean you want to continue to pay to settle on off-base choices. Since it required your investment, doesn't mean it's entitled to continue to take your time for no obvious reason. It is important for your personality now, doesn't mean it should be tomorrow. Since it makes it security, doesn't mean it's right. Correctional facilities and steel bars are additionally unbelievably secure. No, today we are sands breaking. Leaving the past before and setting off our sights are not too far off. Today is the end of yesterday and the beginning of the remainder of your life.